Some people out there, when they talk, they fake the funk. You want brutally honest? Well, if you are brutally honest, look no further than CG Ruthless Sports.
CG Ruthless.
CG Ruthless Sports.
CG Ruthless.
If you want your sports talk to be brutally honest, come check out CG.
CG Ruthless.
If you're not watching CG Ruthless, I don't know what to tell you. Representing the Niner Empire.
CG Ruthless.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Rams YouTuber Jake Ellenbogen. What's up, bro?
How's it going, my man? Long time no talk. I've seen you in my streams. Really do appreciate the support. It's nice to be back on.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's been a while. I know it's been like months, but where can they find you on social media platform?
Yeah, you guys can follow me at JK Bogan on Twitter, and I have all my links there. I'm also JK Bogan on Instagram if you do want to follow that as well.
Oh, that's good, man. Yeah, it's kind of been a long while since the offseason, but speaking of this season, man, we're going to play a third time. What do you look forward to this matchup, man?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see these two teams go at it once again. I think obviously, the Niners have dominated the last 6 times, but I think when you look at it, both defenses are playing really good football. I actually had this coming into the playoffs, felt like the Niners drew a great matchup against the Dallas Cowboys, felt like they were the better team all year and really just dealt with injuries. And then I had the Packers win as well. I felt like they were going to be more physical, and that game was very physical. But, I think what it really comes down to is the way they've been able to pound the rock with Eli Mitchell and Deebo Samuel has been just unbelievable. What they've gotten out of Juwan Jennings, yards after the catch ability. And, Brandon Ayuk, yeah, he had 0 yards last week for the Packers. I don't expect that to repeat. He's a very good receiver in his own right. You have George Kittle, who, hasn't been used as much, which is really scary to me as a Rams fan. Because, this guy can pop off at any time, really. I mean, if you want to take him out of the game, then fine. You're probably going to allow Ayuk or Samuel to get involved. If you want to take Ayuk or Samuel out of the game, you're probably going to let George Kittle get involved. And, I just think the Niners have so many great things on their side of the ball. I think everyone forgot, except for Niners fans, really. They're playing without Mike McGlinchey, and Tom Compton is a huge liability. Don't get me wrong. But they've been able to find ways to kind of alleviate that stress on the offensive line. Trent Williams is the best left tackle in all of football. Just the way that they've been able to play, though, they've really, in my opinion, they've done a nice job of alleviating the pressure on Jimmy Garoppolo, who, to be honest with you, he did not have a good game against the Packers at all. And that's not anybody's surprise. He almost, he threw a few horrible passes to the flat that could have been, pick sixes to, an Eric Stokes or a Jair Alexander. One of those things where, if you throw those in, normal weather, and I don't even know if he would, but if you did, those are probably getting picked off. So, obviously you got to, limit those mistakes, but the way the defense is playing, getting all 3 linebackers back. You look at Azeez Al-Shaair, very good linebacker, not talked about enough. They get back Dre Greenlaw, and of course, Fred Warner, who suffered an injury against Dallas, was there against the Packers. You have, Bosa playing well. You have Jones playing well in the middle. Armstead, they'll have Ambry Thomas, I would expect, this weekend. So, I think all around this is, and I've said this on my streams, the Rams and 49ers, it is not a surprise that these two are facing each other for a third time. Kind of felt that way even after the week 18. And, I wouldn't be surprised if these are the next two, next year, that we're talking about in the NFC title game. I think they're the 2 best teams in the NFC, if Brady and Rodgers both, leave.
Yeah, like the way you were saying it, yeah, like I think this is probably going to be the most interesting division because it hasn't happened for quite a while. But every time we play you guys, it's always been the numbers game. But yeah, the last game when we played against Green Bay, yeah, you can say Jimmy didn't play as great of a game. Like he had some moments where he almost threw away the game. He had that one red zone interception, but lucky it was in the first half because if it was second half, we can be completely honest, that game could have been out of reach from right there. But if it wasn't for the defense and if it wasn't for the special teams, I don't think we wouldn't got to be where we're at. But when I look at the Rams matchup, I feel like a third time, like some have said, hey, third time's the charm for you guys, and maybe there's a chance you guys get over the hump. But then the scary part is we didn't have Trent Williams on that game. We didn't have Quan Williams out there. So you guys had your chances to close it out. But when I was watching the Rams game, and watching how you guys were dominating the Arizona Cardinals, was there any pressure? That was the one thing. And the naysayers about Matthew Stafford not winning a playoff game, he silenced those doubters. He won 2 straight playoff games. But the one question that I'm asking you as a Niners fan, was there any pressure on Stafford on that game? I think he had a really good game, and he was not even touched as much, you know?
I mean, here's the thing is that Stafford is the best against the blitz, which a lot of people wouldn't expect because when you throw a lot of interceptions, you have to assume most of the time that they're being thrown because of pressure. Stafford is not faced by pressure. I think the issue is when Stafford has too much time and there's not a guy open, sometimes he'll just throw into what would be a coverage sack. He's not used to throwing the ball away. He's gotten better with that down the stretch because I think this is a big thing with Stafford. Coming back from the Lions, you have to keep in mind a lot of those games were not close, and he had to reel them back in. He has the most come from behind victories in the league since he entered it in 2009. We just don't talk about him like Tom Brady and that level of clutch because he hasn't played, on the grand stage, and he hasn't really succeeded until this year. You see that throw that he makes off his back foot. They call it, for the love of the game route. Basically it's a route to just create separation and just, open up the field and stretch things out. And so, you have Cooper Kupp go up the seam and then you have OBJ on one side, Van on the other, you have Higbee, and it's supposed to create space for your guys. And he just got open on that play and Stafford just put it right on the money. I mean, people were saying he underthrew it. I'm like, you have to realize he's throwing off his back foot and Ndamukong Suh is in his grill. And he's about to get drilled, and he just throws it over the top. He's been incredible. He really has, even the whole year. I mean, even with his interceptions, I just don't think he gets enough credit. I did a comparison to him and Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, and he's there in just about every category. The only thing that separates him from those guys are the interceptions, when in reality, he had fewer turnovers than Patrick Mahomes this year. So, this idea that he is this turnover machine, sure, the interceptions are bad, but when you look, he threw a lot of those in that bad stretch towards the end of the year. So I do think we're going to get the newer Stafford, the more composed Stafford, the more careful with the ball Stafford in this one. And I think they're going to need it. You look at the Niners, if they can stop the run, they have a good chance to win this game because, then you're just putting it all on the quarterback. But we did see last week when Tampa stopped the run, and they stopped the run, man. They held, Cam Akers to 24 carries, 48 yards. If they're able to do it again, I do think that Matthew Stafford is going to be able to rise to the occasion and win. But obviously, if the Niners can stop the run, it gives them more of an opportunity for sure.
Yeah. Stafford kind of he had his moments when he first started off with Detroit, which, let's be honest, it's not going to be building overnight. But when he played for a team like the Rams, they had the best supporting cast for him. They gave him the best weapons. The best wide receiver in the game, I think, is Cooper Kupp. I mean, this guy's been the most reliable guy. I don't know how other DBs can't even cover this guy. Like, even if you think for 1 minute you might have this guy cover, he's just a step ahead of you. That's one thing I'll give credit for Cooper Kupp, man. But Stafford and Cooper Kupp have something special, man. That chemistry is just off the chains. Like, no disrespect to Jared Goff, but there was nothing between him and Kupp on that connection. But when you look at that overall chemistry, man, it was just that offseason they've been working. It's like they've been working forever, if you think about it. But when I see how they were able to build that chemistry. But the one thing I look at that Buccaneers game was that pass by Stafford. And even the biggest mistake by the Bucs was blitzing during that situation and leaving Kupp open. And that will be the one X factor there is the fact that you guys were able to like have that chemistry and the trust that Stafford trusts him if the game was on the line. But when you guys were able to capitalize, you guys were this close to like choking the lead, but you guys were able to hold on. And that's the one question is Cam Akers, his ball security. Are you a little concerned about his ball security a little bit?
No, it took a crazy. I mean, if you think about it, the last Rams loss, which was against the Niners week 18, the Niners had a 0.4% chance of winning the game after Jimmy Garoppolo went down on that sack by Von Miller under 2 minutes to go. So a lot had to completely unravel to give up that game. And I feel like it's one of those weird things where it may sound like a casual fan, talking, but hear me out when I say it. The Rams didn't need that game. They had already made the playoffs. They had already won the division. They didn't need that win as much as the 49ers did. When the Saints won, they knew, and you could see, in the press box, John Lynch is watching that. All of a sudden, this team now needs this win more than ever. The Saints have won. They can't make the playoffs without winning this game. And so I just think you saw that intensity in the second half. I mean, obviously, Kyle Shanahan probably relayed that information to the team. Let him know like, hey, we got to win this game or we're not playing another one, and I think they wanted it more. It's that simple. They played like they really wanted it. I mean, the Rams absolutely dominated them in the first half. It was not close. If they come out like that again, the way that they've finished games, obviously with the, turnovers hasn't been great, but they were some pretty freak turnovers. I think the Rams, that they got off to another 27-3 lead like they did against Tom Brady and the Bucs, this game would be over, because the thing that made Tom Brady still in the game is that he can throw the deep ball. And I think the Rams game script is they're going to want to get Garoppolo throwing the football as much as possible, put some pressure on him. Right now, the two best pass rushers in the playoffs, without a doubt, the most pressures, it's Von Miller and Aaron Donald. Von Miller has hardly any wear and tear, because if you think about it, he's hardly played the whole year. That's the first thing. The second thing is it's his first season where he's not getting double and triple teamed because he's with Aaron Donald. So Aaron Donald is taking the brunt of the double and triple teams, and it's opening up one-on-one opportunities for Von Miller. It's opening up one-on-one opportunities for, Leonard Floyd. And then you're getting that interior pressure from Donald, and the way Greg Gaines has played, in Sebastian Joseph Day's absence has been huge. Now, my big thing here is, can the Rams stop the run? Because we saw the first game against the Niners, they could not. The second game, they made some adjustments, and I thought they did a decent job. They gave up some chunk plays, but they still, they kept Eli Mitchell to around the 80-yard mark, which I think is, you can win games, on both sides. The Niners can win games with him at 80 yards. The Rams could win that game with him at 80 yards. But, to me, I look at it where if you keep this guy under wraps and you keep Debo under wraps and you make Garoppolo have to play from behind, you have the game won. At that point, Garoppolo is going to have to make throws that he just doesn't want to make. And we've already been told by Kyle Shanahan, the easiest way to tell if a coach really, truly trusts in a quarterback is the way he's used in crunch time. And the 49ers told us by that play call on 3rd and 7, we saw Debo limping off the field on one foot. He was that banged up. They put him there on 3rd and 7, run the ball, end the game, set up a Robbie Gould automatic field goal. And they would rather do that than have Jimmy Garoppolo throw past the first down marker, or they'd rather punt it back to Aaron Rodgers than have Jimmy Garoppolo throw past the first down marker. To me, that lack of trust is there. It's very evident. And it's why I think if the Rams were to get up to a big lead like they did against, Arizona and like they did against Tampa Bay, they would hold on to it pretty easily.
Yeah, I guess the way you're looking at it, like Jimmy hasn't been having that much pressure to win games at times, and the only time he was able to at least be in the game was that Rams game because he had that touchdown pass to go to overtime. But if it wasn't for that, you can make an argument on these two playoff games. Did Jimmy do everything to carry this team? No, it was our defense, it was our running game. Debo did most of the parts, and that's what got us to be where we're at. Special teams was pretty much the reason why we are where we're at right now, because of the block punt, all that stuff. I mean, yeah, Jimmy Garoppolo, he just hasn't been playing spectacular. I don't expect nothing less from this guy. It's like you're getting something out of a guy who's like a Trent Dilfer. he ain't going to give you the stats. He ain't going to give you
Yeah.
much. He's just going to manage the game at best.
No, absolutely. And I saw Bigfoot's mom had a comment up there about Von Miller still injured. First off, no, he's not. And second, he leads all pass rushers in pressures on the quarterback in the playoffs. So he's very much, very well, conditioned. He's in shape. He's in playoff form. He's very similar to how Ndamukong Suh was for the Rams down that stretch when they went to the Super Bowl. I mean, it's evident that he's ready. And another guy that's ready, an acquisition on the other side, Odell. Odell Beckham Jr. he's got off to great starts early on in games, and then the Rams had kind of shut him out a little bit. I'd like to see them continue to use him, and I think that they might do that, but I do think that Cooper Kupp is probably going to go over 100 yards in this game. They're going to really lean on him. I think they use Cam Akers more as a receiver. They'll try to run the ball, of course. Don't get me wrong. I think we'll see a little bit of Sony Michel. Darrell Henderson could be back. So that's something to keep in mind. And then the way Tyler Higbee's played down the stretch has just been so impressive that they'll be using him as well as, probably Van Jefferson.
Yeah, like Tyler Higbee's been an X factor for you guys this season. Like he's been able to step in, and I ain't gonna lie about it. Like, yeah, 2 touchdowns against my Niners, and he was able to at least capitalize and make the big plays. That's one guy you got to watch out for. Yeah, your running game, it's kind of been very consistent. Like even when you guys played us after that, your running game got better after you guys played against Arizona and Tampa. But then Tampa has a really good run defense, so you guys did a solid job, and you guys were able to get the job done. But when I look at this overall matchup, I mean, I know it's going to be a little bit different this time around because both teams are going to want it more. You guys have the pressure because you guys are like the number 4 seed. You guys have a chance to host a Super Bowl at home, and pretty much it's on the line. And for us, a lot of it's been said we're not supposed to be here, and we're just coming here to play for house money.
Yeah. they were 10-7, with all the injuries they had. It's absolutely hogwash. If anybody says the Niners shouldn't be there, they're better than Dallas. They played more physical than the Packers. They would have beaten Arizona, in my opinion. They would have beaten the Eagles pretty easily, and they might have even beaten Tampa. I mean, the thing that they do very well is they put pressure on the quarterback from the interior. You're talking about Jones. You're talking about Armstead. You get Bosa on the outside. Even Sam Sebukam has shown you at times, he can be an impact player. Then you have those linebackers. You have the secondary. The Niners are legit. I mean, I can't stress that enough. Obviously being a Rams fan, I don't love them. They're not my favorite team by any stretch. But I mean, I'm also an analyst, and I watch all the games. I watch all the teams. I can tell you right now, the Niners, anybody that thinks that they shouldn't be there or anybody that was surprised that they beat Dallas wasn't watching Dallas. They were just watching, the primetime games when they were, running up the score against Washington or New York or, Philly. I mean, I watched the Niners all year. I mean, they were in games against good teams. And, they may have not been great against, for instance, Seattle, because for whatever reason, you guys can't beat Seattle, like just how the Rams can't beat, the Niners. But that's neither here nor there. I think really they're set up for the future, in my opinion. I think the both of these teams are. I think the Niners a little bit more because they have Trey Lance, who I think by far was the best quarterback in this draft. I've said it. I think he's going to have a Mahomes 2017 like season. I think he'll have like Mahomes when he played that one game. I think it was in 2017, and then 2018 he became like a superstar. I think we could see that at Lance. I really do. Now you're talking about a guy that has the Jimmy Garoppolo, has the Kyle Shanahan system, has all the weapons that can, win after the catch, but also has that deep ball. And we're talking, I mean, this guy can make all the throws. So, I'm excited to see him as a football fan, not really as a Rams fan, but I'm excited to see him, kind of evolve in this league. And I think, I wouldn't even rule out, if Garoppolo is really struggling and this is it, and they feel like they're down 27-3 in this game and they have no chance of coming back, I wouldn't be surprised if they, tried to light a spark under, this team and put in Trey Lance and see what they could do with that, that big arm. Because I'll tell you right now, the game is over if they get to that lead, because they cannot come back from, they can't just run the ball back. And if they can't run the ball in this game, it's going to be brutal. But there are so many other ways that the Niners can win this game, because if you think about it, if the Rams can't throw the ball, and they do a nice job, and say that, you get a Stafford turnover right off the rip and you get him a little bit rattled. Obviously, league has the best passer rating in the second half. He hasn't thrown a pick in the fourth quarter. He's been unbelievable in the fourth quarter. But, I just feel like at the end of the day, both teams have various ways of how they can win this game and how they could take over this game and turn it into a blowout. I could see both teams, if the Rams get off to a bad start and, say they get the ball first, so they didn't even have that insurance of having it in the second half. I mean, it could be a blowout if the Niners, they can't stop the run. They are not able to control the game where they're forcing Jimmy Garoppolo to play from behind. I mean, when Garoppolo's playing with the lead, that's when they're dangerous because all they really have to do is run the ball and just manage the game with him. Have him make his throws in between the hashes and things like that. But when you're talking about a game where now he has to play out of structure and he has to step up and do more than what is asked for him in the system, that is when you're in the driver's seat. But I could see it both sides. To me, I think it's going to be a 27-17 ball game. I think the Rams pull away at the end. I do think that they're the better team, but I think the Niners have a great matchup against them. I just think this is different. The 0-6 goes out the window. This is now playing for the Super Bowl. They're at home. I understand the Niners fans are going to come in full force, and I'd just say let them come. I mean, at the end of the day, the Rams are 8-2 on the road, so it's not like that's really going to matter. They're used to playing, with that silent count. They just went into Tampa and just knocked off the defending Super Bowl champions. So even if it's 65, percent Niners fans, I don't think it changes the game on the field.
Well, it's a different ball game, and it's out the window. Yeah, like pretty much the regular season of owning you guys for those last 6 meetings is definitely out the window. And you made some valid points about it when it comes down to it. Like, I think a lot of the pressure is on the Rams. I think they're frustrated at the fact that they've been dominant. I think Sean McVay's been asked this question so many times, and I think it's getting to the point where he's getting so annoyed by it. And when Shanahan just looks at it, he's not like as stressed. He's more calm and collective. Like he's just looking at it like it's another game that I take seriously. They're not going to change the approach, and we're just going to try to see if we can still run the ball. We might be a little wrinkle here and there and mix up some plays here and there, but I think what makes it more interesting is the way we're able to run the ball effectively, and you guys have no answers for it. But okay, this guy put a really good question when it comes down to this game. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers, but if you're able to hold him to 10 points, that's a huge win, right? In Lambeau Field, they haven't lost all season at Lambeau until that playoff game. What was your thoughts on it?
Yeah, they're not giving enough respect to the Niners defense, which I can't stress enough. I mean, Rodgers came in that game. They scored on the first possession. That looked like a blowout. I mean, like they came out and I instantly was like, I had the Niners winning this game close I had them winning like 24-21. And, they came out and I was like, I looked over at my father. I'm like, this is going to be a blowout, isn't it? And he's like, well, I don't know, and they came out like looking really hot. And then the Niners took over in the second half. And I mean, they couldn't score touchdowns, but the defense kept them in the game so long that it allowed those, big time plays, from, either blocking the field goal or blocking the punt. The punt actually resulted in, 6 points. So, I just think at the end of the day, when your defense gives you that many chances and you're still not even able to capitalize with your offense, but your special teams is that good that you're able to actually overcome that and win with your special teams, that's incredible, football. And that's not all three phases football, It's really not. I mean, really what it comes down to is all three phases, and complementary football is when you play on offense, defense, and special teams. You could argue that the Packers, who have one of the worst special teams units I've ever seen, had a lot to do with that. But at the same time, you got to give the Niners credit. And, I do think the biggest issue by far is not necessarily about the climate that they've played in. It's that, Garoppolo is 9-2 when he doesn't throw a touchdown, meaning, you could look at it multiple ways, but I would look at it in terms of he's 9-2 and 3-0 in the playoffs when they don't have to include him in the passing game. Like they don't have to include him in the game plan when they can just basically run it down teams' throats. And I feel like if the Rams, we talked about the first time, ran all over them. Second time, Rams made adjustments, still ran pretty well, but was a lot better. This third time, there's a chance that they're going to have Sebastian Joseph Day back, who has the best win rate of any defensive lineman in the league in run blocking situations. So he sheds run blocks. He takes on double teams. He's a gap eater. They've missed him for weeks. If he comes back, they have Ernest Jones back. Like, this is a team that isn't as banged up as they should be this late in the season. And a reason for that is because they have an incredible training staff. Reggie Scott is the best in the business. And on top of it, they have incredible depth. I mean, the fact that they can have a guy like Nick Scott, former 7th round pick, really drafted to be a special teams guy out of Penn State. He didn't play a lot of defense, period, in college. They have him come in, and he's been unstoppable in the playoffs. You have all this depth everywhere. You have Troy Reader, UDFA, out of Delaware, who's now wearing the green dot, who's calling the plays. He's played well at linebacker. You have late round pick out of TCU, former safety turned into a linebacker in Traven Howard. Greg Gaines, 4th round pick out of Washington, has really stepped up. So the depth that the Rams have is the reason why they're here. Just like same thing with the Niners, what they have as well. So really what it comes down to is if Sebastian Joseph Day does play, I think he'll make a serious impact to the point where I do think the Rams can stop that run. The only player I feel like the Rams just haven't been able to stop is Deebo Samuel, because no matter what they do, Samuel is a spin away, just breaking a tackle away from a touchdown. I mean, I called him the most electric player in the playoffs for that reason. Cooper Kupp is the best receiver. It's not even close. He has the most receiving yards of any receiver in the history of the sport if you combine the playoffs. He actually went over 2,000. He's the only receiver to ever do that. But Deebo Samuel and what he does as a runner, ball in his hands, I think Kyle Shanahan truly gets how to use him now. And I think, this is a copycat league. And I think it did take, Cordell Patterson, the way he started this season off and how he was used as a runner. I think that really happened. And of course, it pushed teams like the Niners to use Deebo. You saw the Bills using Isaiah McKenzie that way. It just kind of changed the rhythm. But I honestly like Deebo more as a runner. I think he's the best running back that you have. I mean, he's the receiver, of course. Don't get me wrong. He's a great receiver. But I feel like he just does such a better job as a running back. And it's crazy, but he's just so good. He picks his spots. He sets up blocks well. He breaks tackles. And as soon as I said he should have 30 touches a game, he got hurt immediately against the Packers. But that's the guy I'm most worried about, not Kittle, even though you very much respect Kittle. I've had Kittle on my show. I love Kittle. I'm not as worried about Kittle or an Ayuk or a Jawan Jennings or even an Eli Mitchell as much as I am about Deebo, who could absolutely break the game open.
Yeah, Debo he can do a lot. Like, even like you said, as a runner, like I looked at his average yards, it's about over 6 yards a carry or something like that. And he's very tough to stop. After contact, he's physical. And that's what makes it interesting on our offense is Shanahan's able to utilize him, and it's still he's starting to figure out how to use them, and it's starting to work. And I feel like this running game with Debo, even if we have to give him like maybe 10 carries or so, or up to 12, and then give it to Mitchell here and there, I feel like if we mix up the running game, that's what got the Rams off those previous games, because we were able to run it down. You guys are throwing a little bit on the trenches. But the last time we were playing you guys, we didn't have Trent Williams, and that can be the X factor. And looking at the injury update from him, it looks like he just had the similar injury to what Jordan Willis had the previous playoff game against the Cowboys. It's like an old injury, and it's like re-aggravated or something like that, and he should be cleared to play this game from what I'm looking at. And then Abry Thomas should be out there. And then you guys have, was it Taylor Rapp supposed to return this week, if I'm correct, right?
He might. The Rams are in a weird position here where, I mean, I don't know if you necessarily start any of the guys that are coming back from injury. I don't know if you start Ernest Jones and take Troy Reader and Traven Howard out of the rhythm. As great as Ernest Jones is, I feel like I would rotate him in and out. I don't know if you start Taylor Rapp the way Eric Weddle played last week and the way Nick Scott's played and Terrell Burgess. I don't know if you start, you can't really start Sebastian Joseph Day because you can't put Greg Gaines on the bench. Maybe you start him over Ashawn or whatever, but probably, a situational guy that they bring in, against the run. And then, I mean, really, you can't, you can, but Whitworth, starting him is not a guarantee as it was before, because Noteboom just had the best pass blocking performance of anybody in the playoffs. So, I mean, he came in there and was dominant on the left side. I just don't know if I'm changing. I'm going with the hot hand personally when it comes to late in the season. Unless it's a Cooper Kupp, a Debo Samuel, like I'm talking super uber impact player. I'm most likely going to go with, riding the hot hand. And that's why I think the Rams do have some decisions to make there, because you don't want to absolutely, take yourself out of the rhythm that you've put yourself in. But at the same time, it's like it's Whitworth, it's Ernest Jones, it's Taylor Rapp. These guys have helped you get here, and I think that that's a big thing.
Yeah, it is. Sometimes, like you said, about how they're playing together as a unit, it's like if you get a guy coming off an injury, it can either ruin a rhythm a little bit because of the way they're coming off an injury. And then, yeah, dude, like you just said, that Joseph Day, if he comes in, you guys are probably just going to either limit him a little bit, right? And that's part of what makes him very interesting is like you got this other guy, Greg Gaines, who's a really good run stopper, solid pass rush in the rotation, and Joseph Day has been one of your best run stoppers too. But then Alshon Robinson, he doesn't get talked about as much, but he's a really good run stopper when it comes down to it. And that's what makes it kind of interesting about the fact that the Rams do have some solid defense, and it matches up physically good. The Niners and Rams, it's technically identical in some ways, but you guys are just a more talented team. There's a difference. We're just an all team. You guys are just like the Lakers, if I had to put it that way. You guys are going all in for that all-star type talent, and that's what it is. But when you look at the Niners, we're trying to build off like the Warriors. I don't know. I just think that's a different approach, the way we're building our talent.
No, it definitely is. I mean, these are also these two teams have the most aggressive GMs. I mean, just look at what, John Lynch has done, going out and trading for the number 3 overall pick, getting Trey Lance. They do it's different ways of aggression, but like they trade up to get Trey Sermon. No idea why he doesn't play at all. I think he's a talented back, but they've done that. They've traded for guys. They went and they traded for Omenahue. I thought that was a really good move for them. The Rams, I mean, they trade for guys like Ramsey. They look at less about picks and more about, getting proven talent. Now, what it really comes down to is that both of these teams, they're different on offense, but both are good offensively, both are good defensively, and both have great special teams. And I can't believe I'm saying that, because if you asked me 10 weeks ago if the Rams had a good special teams, I would have laughed. I would have said they have one of the worst. But they've really turned it on down the stretch. They've made some incredible plays on special teams. They have the best returner, I would say, in football, in my opinion, in Brandon Powell. He's somebody that was with the Buffalo Bills. They let him go because, simply put, he doesn't do as much as Isaiah McKenzie. He was probably a better returner than McKenzie, but McKenzie's a receiver, So they let him go. He's now with the Rams. It took him 2 games to have a punt return touchdown. Only like a few guys had return touchdowns this season anyway. And then you look at him, it's just he gets the ball and it's no stutter step. It's just he takes off like a rocket, and I love that about him. He has got this quick burst about him, this quick get off. He's gone. And I think that's the thing. You get a good block. He sets up his blocks well. The way special teams is playing. Wouldn't be surprised if we have a punt block. Wouldn't be surprised if we have a punt return. Both of these teams they're complementary football teams at the end of the day. So, I feel at the end of the day, what it comes down to is that these teams can win with offense, defense, and special teams.
Yeah, they could, because both of them are actually kind of shown some good resilience on 3 phases. Like even on your special teams, your kicker, he's been very consistent too. And before that, you had Greg the Lake Sirline, who was at one point a very consistent kicker, but then had his struggles, and then you guys moved on from him. And then you guys had your special teams issues at one point. Then your defense has been your strength for quite a while. Let's be honest; they've been really strong. Even through the Jeff Fisher era, you guys had a really good defense, and it's still built on from that culture. But you guys went from Brandon Staley to a Raheem Morris type defense, and I think it's still a really good defense, no matter how we see it. And then your offense, it's gotten better before. I mean, but then I think Robert Woods is just one of the biggest he lost.
yeah.
Like, he doesn't get talked about much, but this dude is one of your, like, the best blocker, the guy who can run the routes. This guy was reliable. That's what makes it more kind of like the one underrated loss because of him, because this guy does it all for you guys, and he doesn't get much mention. I mean,
Oh,
no
absolutely.
disrespect. Yeah, no disrespect to Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham, but Robert Woods should get some respect out of his name, bro, because he plays it at the highest level.
Well, it's been, the hashtag win it for Bobby, because I mean it's kind of the irony here. I'm wearing a Devils sweatshirt, and I was at a New Jersey Devils game, and I got the news that he tore his ACL, and I actually got an anonymous tip from somebody on Twitter that he tore his ACL, and it was like 5 a.m. I'm like, who the hell is, like, and it's like a burner account, so I'm like not entirely sure if I can even trust this thing. And then it comes out later on that day, and I'm like, oh my God, that anonymous burner account was giving me actual information. I could have reported it, but I wasn't going to report it because I'm like, that's not a source, So it just awful, what he does. And I honestly, I'll tell you, and it really goes to show you, the Niners did a great job, when they played the Rams, at Levi. But here's the thing. That game was an anomaly because the Rams haven't been blown out by anybody this season. Really Arizona, but I mean, that game, I don't know if I'd call it a blowout. But I mean, the 31-10 affair in November on Monday Night Football, that was a combination of a lot coming together. I feel like you can't take away the Niners' credit, but I don't feel like the Rams get blown out of the water the way they did if they didn't have to completely alter their game plan. Because when Robert Woods went down with the torn ACL, they were looking at Odell getting some plays in. They weren't thinking, hey, Odell, hey, Ben Skoranek, it's your time. You have to start. Odell didn't have a practice. So he didn't have a practice. He goes out there and he ends up almost starting. Ben Skoranek, I mean, he was behind early on in the year because he hurt his arm. So he missed like 4 games, and he was a special team guy. So now all of a sudden your game plan that's heavily involving Robert Woods in that game, now all of a sudden you have to change your game plan. He tears his ACL on Friday. You find out the true diagnosis on Saturday. The game's on Monday. So I do feel like if they, played that and Woods towards ACL on Monday before the Monday Night Football game, it's a completely different game. But I think you have to take into account that, it's not really an excuse. I mean, it's just a fact. The Rams had to completely alter their game plan because a lot of it was, about Robert Woods. And, they use a lot of these rub routes that get guys open, that create space. And you can't just throw OBJ in the mix with that when he doesn't know the playbook. You can't just throw Ben Skoranek in that when he's a special teamer and has no experience. So it was really not an easy transition. Plus, they were expecting to get Vaughn back. They got the initial diagnosis is that he was going to play. And then, the ankle ended up, I believe it was an ankle, ended up being worse than they were told, coming out of that trade. So there was a lot going on. I think there was a lot to kind of integrate. And so because of that, it was the perfect storm for a Niners blowout. And then, you look at afterwards, they haven't been blown out. They obviously lost those games against the Titans, the Niners, and the Packers back, all 3. But then they won, 5-6 straight, lost to the Niners week 18, which I'll tell you, man, I got to tell you right now, I think that was more of a win for the Rams than people give it credit. The Rams lost that game, and it was hopefully the last loss of the season for them, because here's the thing. You learn more in your losses than you do in your wins. And when I watched them lose that game, I was mad as a fan. But when I really thought about it, look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The whole year, they were not able to win 5 straight. Look at it. They were not able to win 5 straight. In order to get to the NFC title game, they would have had to win 5 straight. They couldn't do it. The Rams got to, 5-6 game winning streak, and they lost to the Niners. Now, had they won that game, who's to say that against Dallas or whoever they played, Eagles, whoever, they get all high and mighty. They finally beat, the 49ers. Oh my God, we broke that curse thing. And then, it sets up a letdown because they lost. Because they lost the way they did. Sean McVay immediately was able to turn around and fix that issue. They suffocated Arizona, and then against Tampa, they had the same type of collapse with way more incredibly, ridiculous fumbles, bad snaps, things like that, things that just don't happen every game. And instead of Sean McVay running out the clock, going to overtime, dealing with the overtime rules, potentially giving the ball to Brady and then ending the game there, he was like, you know what? No, I'm not going to do that. I learned my lesson from the 49ers game. I'm not going to run it 3 times and punt the ball away like I did and gave Garoppolo and the Niners an opportunity to go down the field and prevent defense and win and tie the game and go to overtime to win it. No, instead, he learned from his mistake. And keep in mind, he's 36. He still makes mistakes. He learned from that. And that's why I believe that week 18 was more beneficiary than people give it credit for, because who's to say they do throw the ball there? They go for the kill shot. Stafford hits the kill shot. I really believe that they don't do that. And I really believe that there's a chance they're not even there if they beat the 49ers week 18.
Yeah, I think that game alone for us, like, we had to win this game because the Saints were already beat the Falcons, so that had to be a win for us. That was more like do or die for us. You guys were pretty much like you had nothing else to prove, and you guys were just playing your best football, but you made some critical mistakes that are fixable. But speaking of it like that, you guys have learned from your mistakes, and you guys did beat Tampa even when you guys almost choked the lead. But when I look at it this way, like, okay, how do you feel about Samson Ebukam, man? Like, he's kind of been stepping up lately for the Niners, and he's been kind of like the X factor. What's your thoughts of him?
Yeah,
Since this guy gave me a good question.
Yeah, I liked when they got him. Very athletic talent. Always felt like he was mainly an inside linebacker, though, that they kind of just tried to push at edge. But the Niners paid him way more than I would have, so I totally understood why he was gone. But he's had an impact as kind of, a change of pace type of guy. He's built a little bit differently than a Bosa, who wins with, power to speed, or a speed to power rather, where, Ibukam's trying to use that speed to get around the edge. Doesn't really have the power that Bosa has. So, I think it's complementary. It's kind of like a Willis or kind of like an Omenahue, where Omenahue's more power, I think, and Willis is more power. So you add a guy like, Ibukam, who's more of a speed rusher. That does make sense. I think he's had a solid year. I wouldn't, go too far, as to say that he's been great, but he's been solid for what they ask him to do. Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely been solid. Like, I know there's a lot of other guys besides Bosa. You got Armstead playing solid. Like, mostly when you put him on the inside, that's where he plays his best football. But if you put him in the outside, he's too slow, and that's what kills it. But you look at guys like Arden Key, Charles Amodahu, those guys have been stepping in. I mean, Jordan Willis is another reserve guy. That's what makes it so interesting about our talent. DJ Jones is another guy, and Kevin
DJ
Given.
Jones, he's been incredible. That's the thing. I think that's really the recipe for the success that they've had down the stretch, is that interior pressure. When you get interior pressure, you can't step up in the pocket. When you can't step up in the pocket, you can't really step in your throws. And when you can't step in your throws, you're not getting velocity. You're not getting accuracy. So it made it hard for Rodgers, made it hard for Stafford, made it hard for Dak. That's the recipe for success. It's why the Rams have built their defense around Aaron Donald, because if you can get Aaron Donald going up the middle, then now all of a sudden this quarterback can't step into his throw. And if he tries to sidestep Donald, he might run into a Floyd, or he might run into Von Miller or Greg Gaines. And that's how you set up the trap, so to speak, in the quarterback pocket. I think, Garoppolo gets the ball out decently quickly, but it's not anywhere near as Brady. So I think it was great practice last week, to be honest with you, that, the Rams were rushing against a guy like Tom Brady, a guy that was getting rid of the ball really quickly, and we're still able to sack him 3 times.
Yeah, because Brady usually throws that ball pretty quick, and he quickly processes. But you guys were able to get him 3 sacks. Was pretty much like you did a good job there. Like, you guys were playing good in the first half, dominating them. This looked like this game was pretty much going to be a blowout, if I had to be honest. And then in the second half, there was collapse here. The main concern about it is, like, I think a lot of it should be fixable, but we shall wait and see what happens. But when I look at this overall game, I look at the fact that Stafford hasn't really thrown mistakes. He hasn't thrown any picks since week 18. And I think the reason why he has had a pretty good game is because nobody was able to pressure him consistently. Like you just said, if they blitz him, he does well. He has better percentage. But if you do like those less pressure, like the ones where they just do their job right, that's where he doesn't do too much effectively. I've noticed the stats, like the way you said it, when you blitz on Stafford, Stafford does really good. And that's what makes it kind of like people don't get. Like Stafford does good on pressure when it's need to, but when you blitz him, you're screwed. Don't even try to blitz him at times.
Yeah, I mean, well, I definitely would blitz Garoppolo, wouldn't blitz Stafford, wouldn't blitz Mahomes, and I would blitz Burrow. It's not that Burrow can't, operate under a blitz. It's that the offensive line is such a joke right now. The blitz is going to get through quicker than Burrow can read a defense. And it's going to, I mean, if you put anybody behind that offensive line, you're probably getting the same result. So, yeah, I mean, that would probably be my course of action. I think when you don't blitz guys like Stafford and Mahomes, you make it harder on them. And, again, there are guys that do well against the blitz. There are guys that don't. You have to find the ones that don't, and you have to just, go overload one side of the offensive line and see if you can create some mismatches. But, I think that I think the 49ers have watched a lot of Tampa film to be like, you know what, we're probably not going to be doing what they did there. We'll probably do this, And so I think that there'll be a lot of adjustments made for sure.
Yeah, there's going to be different adjustments because most opponents, they got to look at the film and see what went wrong with this team and why this team won and what they can do to actually beat this team. And, it's not going to be easy playing you guys, and you guys are doing your film work on all this stuff. So you're probably going to look into the Green Bay game and say, this is what the defense did to Jimmy, and this is what they got to this game closer. And if you look at the Dallas team, you're going to say, this is what they did pretty well, and this is what they did terrible. And that's how you guys would be able to adjust. And I know the week 18 game, that film's out the door. You guys are just gonna see what you guys can do better next time.
Yeah, and I think really, the Rams disguise coverage more than any team in the league. So I think they already know they kind of have a built-in, it's going to be hard for Garoppolo to even read this coverage and everything. And so, if you rush his throws, if you get him to make a Kyler Murray, where he's just like that, then you're going to have a good chance to win this game, because I think even with no pressure, I do think Garoppolo is prone for one mistake. And, the question is, do you capitalize on that mistake? Do you turn that into an interception, or do you drop it? Because you don't know how many of those you're going to get.
Yeah, because those are the opportunities that you ain't gonna get, and that's the thing. Jimmy Garoppolo isn't gonna be the kind of guy that's gonna out. I mean, he's not gonna win a shootout with Stafford. I think he just has to be able to get the job done. Stafford, when he has to be forced to throw the ball, that's the one thing that makes it interesting, is he can either have a brilliant performance where he looks really good, and then there's this performance where he just throws a couple of picks here and there and almost costs you guys the game. So that will be the one factor, is like, when I look at the tail of the tapes of the Rams, you guys are really good in the first half. The Niners, not so much first half team, but the second half, we make the most adjustments when it comes down to it. Like, if you notice how D'Amico Ryans changes up the coverages here and there and makes the quick adjustment, that's where I kind of give credit where it's due for D'Amico Ryans. He does a lot more better adjustments than what Robert Saleh would ever do, just realistically. I see this guy becoming a head coach, and I see him getting the interviews, and it's kind of crazy how he's a smart guy. Like, I got to give him credit for being a first-year defensive coordinator.
Oh, yeah. Well, I said, kind of coming out, when they were going to let go of, when they were going to have to let go of Saleh and let him go get his job, I said immediately, I'm like, D'Amico Ryans has to be the fit there, because, promoting from within is so important. I'm hoping Sean McVay does that if they do lose Raheem Morris, who's done an incredible job. But promoting from within is so important. And when you have a guy like D'Amico Ryans, a young former NFL player that was not long ago just in the NFL, who just gets it, and has been in the right state of mind, has been with the right people, you got to pull the trigger on that, and then they also have McDaniel, OC, who's getting head coaching conversation about him as well. I kind of thought he would go to the Dolphins, but I don't know if you heard, but the Dolphins, basically the only prerequisite is that you have to be okay to coach and you have to keep Tua as your quarterback. I think that's just that's a little ridiculous. So I don't know if anybody is going to take that job from the Niners, or I mean, I don't know who's going to take that job, to be honest with you, because I think a big part of, being a head coach is being able to trust who the quarterback is. And, if you're sitting there kind of feeling like you're stuck with this guy, even if he's not playing well, it's just not a good start to a young coach's career.
Yeah, and especially if it's not a quarterback that he's not committed to. Like if you're gonna hire a head coach, you got to make sure he gets his quarterback first. But if he likes this guy and he's gonna work with him, then he's okay with it. But like you just said, like Mike McDaniels, I don't know. I think he wants a quarterback that would fit the scheme of what he wants to run. And I don't know about Tua. Tua's just a little too inconsistent. And I think that's the only interesting factor is whoever the Dolphins hire, it's going to have to depend on who wants to give Tua a chance. And I mean, it depends on it. But when I look at these candidates, yeah, D'Amico Ryans, I think he deserves some considerations to be a head coach, but I think he needs another year to just season up his play calls and elevate. I mean, that's kind of like the same way they did with Brandon Staley last year. He had his first year, and I think hiring him was just kind of an interesting move, but you could have given him another year to build this entire commodity. But they just want to take the hot names and then somehow they don't.
Yeah. Well, I'm okay with that because here's the thing, what I'll never do. I'll never have an issue with a team trying to go against the status quo. Not hiring a guy like Doug Peterson, Jeff Fisher, Jim Caldwell, and going after a hot name. I have no issue with that. If like the Jets going after Robert Saleh, like I was all for that, I just kind of feel like when like the coaching searches between guys that are just, it's a stock game, when in reality, like what is your job? Like what are you trying to do? Like when John Fox was fired by the Dolphins, or let go by the Dolphins, or not the Dolphins, the Broncos, and he goes to the Bears, he was already a head coach with the Panthers. So then, he had his moments and then he went downhill. And when he went downhill, he got fired, and then he became the defensive coordinator for the Broncos, did a good job. And then he got the head coaching job, with the Bears. It's all a stock game to me with those type of coaches. So you want to get a guy, you're not going to get a Sean McVay. You're not going to get Shanahan. You're probably not going to get, I mean, you might, but it's not super likely. But you want to get a guy that's new. You want to get a guy that's fresh and doesn't feel like you're just abiding by the system and the status quo and like going after, career head coaches. Because I'm sorry, like, no, I don't know any Cowboys fans that want Mike McCarthy as the head coach. They'd rather have Kellen Moore. They'd rather have Dan Quinn. But even Dan Quinn is somewhat of a status quo because he was already a head coach. Vic Fangio, as much as I like him, he's status quo. Going out and getting Kellen Moore, a Thomas Brown from the Rams, a Ejiro Evero from the Rams, the other two guys from the Rams, Kevin O'Connell, Raheem Morris, going out and getting D'Amico Ryans, Mike McDaniel, going out and getting those younger coaches, just to me sends a message that you're not playing around. Like you're doing something fresh. You're having some sort of reboot. And to me, that is the right approach. I understand the veteran coaches. I understand the pros and the cons, but I just think that there's way more pros going with a guy that's fresh. He's new. And if you truly believe in him, you can end up with a guy like Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, somebody along that line, even Mike Tomlin, who was the youngest coach at one point in the NFL.
Yeah, like it just depends on how they give him a chance and all that stuff. I mean, I've seen it with the Bengals when they hired Zach Taylor. Zach Taylor wasn't quite a popular name, but he was just working with Sean McVay. He was just like a quarterback's coach.
Yeah.
And it took him a while to gel with the Bengals. And then he started to have his breakout year. Sometimes you got to be patient with these coaches, and it pays off. Shanahan had some injuries, and he had to work with talent. And it took a while for him to have winning seasons. And I don't know, no disrespect to Sean McVay, but I think he had a really good supporting cast of talent, and he was able to build around it. And that's what made him so better than Jeff Fisher was. He was able to make Jared Goff look like a perennial Pro Bowl.
Yeah, I don't think it's offensive. I mean, I think that's kind of why a lot of Rams fans were so tired of, Jeff Fisher, because we looked at that roster. I mean, Sean McVay kept that roster pretty much intact. I mean, they went out, sure, they go out and get Whitworth, they get Kupp in the draft, they get Gerald Everett, John Johnson, they signed Robert Woods. Don't get me wrong, those are all additions, but they still had Robert Quinn, who we've already seen, Robert Quinn has emerged as one of the best pass rushers again in the league. He was, I believe, second or third in sacks this season. They had William Hayes, who they ended up trading away. They had Trumaine Johnson, who was coming off a really good year. They had LaMarcus Joyner. They had all sorts of guys, and I think that's my thing. Like Alec Ogletree at one point or another was supposed to be a really good linebacker and just he never really, it didn't take off. But I mean, they were given a really good defense. The weapons on offense, they had to be revamped. They kept Tavon Austin. They didn't bring back Kenny Britt. They didn't bring back Trey Mason, but that was mainly his decision from what I was told. So, I mean, they had guys. So I do think like McVay did a good job, but yeah, I agree that like it proves that Jeff Fisher could have done better with what he had. And it did show everything that I was saying the year before. That team should never have gone 4-12. Absolutely not. They had many of those games they should have won. And that's what happens, and we say it all the time. Being a Rams fan, I mean, I would just sit there watching it with my family and be like, we should have won this game. When you have Sean McVay as your head coach now, you realize you shouldn't have won those games. You win the games you deserve to win. You put yourself in a position, if it's that close of a game and it's decided by a call, you put yourself in a position for it to be decided by a call. Now, I am super, super negative and critical of the officiating, but I'm just going to call it like it is. If you put yourself in a position for the last play of the game to ruin you, that's on you. And so, when people say, well, the record doesn't indicate how they are, and I'm even guilty myself of saying that at times, because I do believe it works for the Niners who dealt with some injuries, and 10-7 doesn't show the injuries. But, the record does indicate who you are, because when you're talking about the full scope of a team, part of a team is being able to respond from those injuries. And I think the Niners did, and that's why they're 10-7. It's why they kept their season alive. It's why they were able to make the playoffs. You look at the Rams, they had all sorts of injuries. They lose Robert Woods. They lose Sebastian Joseph Day. They, have to play without Jalen Ramsey and Tyler Higbee in a few games. And, they had all sorts of injuries, all across the board. And they still, despite all those injuries, losing Cam Akers before the season started, they still go 12-5. To me, the record does show what you are. And I just feel like, with Jeff Fisher, constant 7-9, 8-8, 6-10, it just kind of goes to show you that's what the Rams were. They were a team that essentially could be in any game. They could win any game, but they could lose any game. And I still kind of feel that way about this team. But I just feel like, with Jeff Fisher's Rams, they could play the best game possible and still lose because they just weren't as good as other teams. With Sean McVay's Rams, I think this is the best team. I had them win the Super Bowl before the season started, and I never picked them to win the Super Bowl. But when I watch this team, they have yet to lose a game when they play their game. So meaning when they play their style, they play a balanced offense. They don't give up the ball. They play good defense. They play good special teams, complementary football. No one beats them. But when all of a sudden they're playing other teams' game, like the 49ers are very similar to how the Titans were. The Titans were the number 1 seed, but they made every game ugly. The 49ers want to make games ugly. They want you to play their game. And so if the Rams allow that, then yeah, they have a good chance of losing. But I just think I've seen it. The Rams have played a bunch of games this year where they've had bad games and, they've really been forced to play either from behind or they've been forced to play other teams. The tempo's different, things like that. But I've seen games where they've absolutely dominated the script. They've dominated the game plan. And we've seen that before with, the Bears game, the Giants game, the Texans game, obvious teams that you should beat. But then we see it against the Vikings, and the Vikings, sure, they came back in that game, but the Rams, I thought, controlled that game. I thought they controlled the game against Arizona on Monday Night Football. That game should have been an absolute blowout and wasn't even as, much of a blowout as it could have been. But I just feel like, in those games where they're able to control and play their style of football and not turn the ball over, they win those games 100% of the time. So, in conclusion, this team could lose to anybody because, of the ability of them, playing down other teams. But at the same time, they can beat anybody because when they play at their best, they are the best team in the league. I think their best we have not seen yet, which that should scare the rest of the league, to be honest with you, because, if they do get by the 49ers, like I believe they will, and they play the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl, like I believe they will, as a rematch to the 2018 Monday Night Football game, 54-51, I'm thinking we're going to see that offensive explosion we haven't seen all year. And maybe we even see the offensive explosion we haven't seen all year against the Niners. Who knows? But they still have not played a full, complete game. I think the closest was against the Buccaneers earlier in the year. And then you could argue the Arizona Cardinals wild card game.
Yeah, because you guys were playing in the playoffs and you guys were playing through, like, you had one home game, then you went into Tampa and you guys had to play. And the thing about Stafford was he was able to silence the doubters because they talked about how he wasn't able to win the big one. But speaking of this, since you're saying that if that's the outcome of the game, what if this comes around? Like, this is the question that this guy's asked. What would be your thoughts of this if this ends up being the Niners winning a third time in a row?
Well,
Like,
I mean,
how would that feel?
of course I'd be pissed. I mean, well, think about the effects of that. I mean, first off, just everything like I've gone through, the end of last year to this year, losing my grandfather. This is kind of the one thing I'm kind of clinging on to. Like, okay, this is cool. I would really I would really like a nice little pick me up, so to speak. So yeah, I'd be pissed, especially the rival of my favorite team. Having to hear, not yourself. I think you're one of the best 49ers fans I've ever come across. So I don't think you, but, there's a lot of people that would be so unbearable and would, make me so easily root against them in the Super Bowl. That would piss me off. And then on top of it, hearing the Stafford haters back again, like as if, last week didn't happen. They beat the GOAT, so to speak. That would piss me off. And then, on top of it, I mean, it kind of takes a little bit of a hit on my business, because YouTube, I do it full time. So, it wouldn't be great for my business either if the Rams lost, but, just talking logistically, speaking, it sucks all the way around. As a fan, as a content creator, it sucks. So I'm not ready to get into the NFL draft yet. Hopefully the Rams aren't about to push me in that direction. And I really don't think they are, because I think at the end of the day, I think this team, since about week 11, week 12 has been on a crash course with the Kansas City Chiefs. I really do believe that, and we'll see what happens. But I really think that, Sean McVay, it's one of those things where young coach made the adjustments right after, the first 3 game, that 3-game losing streak right after Green Bay. And despite the fact that Green Bay held the ball 2/3 of that game. And it's honestly the same thing where the Niners beat the Packers, but I think the Rams were going to beat the Packers even if the Niners lost. I think the Packers are a good team, but they never felt like that number 1 seed that was just dominant. And we've seen that before. We've seen the 15-1 Pittsburgh Steelers go to the Super Bowl. Like, we've seen teams at the number 1 seed that were dominant. This year just didn't feel like that. It felt like the Packers had a little bit of a, easier schedule in a sense. They played a different style of game with Rodgers. He wasn't making too many of those high percentage as far as the degree of difficulty and, those high percentage throws, so to speak. I think they really ran more of a balanced offense when you look at, AJ Dillon getting more of the carries this year and Aaron Jones and using them. The defense played very well, but I felt like the Rams truly would have won that, rematch against them just the way the Niners did against them, because they played the Niners earlier in the year and they almost lost to the Niners. They probably should have. So, my point is, the Packers had that game. They won it by 8 at home and they held the ball 2/3 of the game. The Rams were like, we're done with this. We got to be able to run the football. We got to be able to stop with the time of possession, because it was getting ridiculous. The Rams' time of possession, it was keeping Stafford on the sideline. The bend don't break defense was just getting absolutely gashed, and it wasn't working. And so when Sean McVay changed up a little bit, tightened up the defense, you can tell the defense since has had this little, edge, so to speak, tightened up, the offense and, different things along the lines of changing their blocking schemes and even the time to spend game planning and getting Odell involved more, I think was beneficial. You look at the Jaguars game was the get right game to get them back on that winning path. And then they were able to beat Seattle, Minnesota, Arizona, Baltimore. It was just a very, clear message sent that Sean McVay is growing. And despite the fact sometimes, he can get on the fans' nerve and can be, conservative, and his play calling will have you be in there like, wow, he is amazing one way. And then the other way, it might be like, oh my God, what is he thinking? At the end of the day, this guy is 2 years younger than Belichick when he became a head coach. We need to realize that he's continuing to grow. He's continuing to learn from his mistakes. He's just absolutely impressed me down the stretch here. Raheem Morris was 100% the right hire, so he's already proven himself in that regard. And so I think the Rams come out, they're going to win this game 27-17, and I think they're going to send the Niners home, but I think there's a good chance that this is a rematch in next year's NFC title game.
Yeah, we'll definitely see about that. Like, I know you have your belief. I know there's possibility of your revenge, but this is just a team that's getting hotter and peaking at the right time. I mean, this is going to be a really close game. Last time we played you guys, we didn't have Trent Williams. We didn't have Quan Williams, and I feel like that could be the one difference maker that can determine the team between both. But I definitely have us winning 27-21. I think the Rams are going to give us a good fight. Maybe next year down the stretch, you guys might see us again. I think it's going to be consistently like how some teams like the Steelers and Ravens have done it before, where they compete 3 times a year. This can be that kind of division that I could definitely see. But in all perspectively, I've kind of gone through the same pain as what you've gone through. This would be something I could hold on to because of my brother who was gone a couple of years back, and then my grandfather who just left like during last year, and then my pops, which I mean, my pops was a Cowboys fan, but still, I want to be able to bask the glory and get through the tough times and get through it. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's one of those, it's one of those days, and I feel the same pain, but hey, let the best team win. We shall see. I mean, it's going to be a different Rams team. I know you guys are determined. I know you guys are frustrated. You're very mad at the fact that you want to get your win. You want to get over the hump. I get that.
I think it's more the fans, to be honest with you, because I think Sean McVay does a really good job of keeping this team focused and on to each game, because I had a lot of Rams fans telling me this team is not going to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because they're going to look ahead to the 49ers and lose. And I said, they're absolutely not looking ahead. This is a Sean McVay coach football team that does not look ahead. They don't look at the press clippings, all of those, cookie cutter messages that sound good when you say them or you hear talking heads say them on the news. They don't do any of that. They're a football team that has this level of relatability because their coach is young. He's younger than Whitworth. They're a very open culture. And I feel like at the end of the day, the Rams are either going to play their game and win this game, or they're just going to, play down and they're not going to play up to their standard and they're going to lose. And, if they do win the game, then, I mean, I will be very happy and I won't be surprised, but I won't be surprised if they lose the game because I've also seen them lose to this team 6 times. I've also seen this team, at times show you a lot of, oh, this is when they're coming alive and then they lose. Here's the thing though. The 2018 season, they really should have ended up playing the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Regardless of that, I felt like they were the best team that year. They at least made it to the Super Bowl. 2017 felt too early. They lose to the Falcons the first round. And honestly, you don't want to be the 3 seed. Historically, the 3 seed only makes the Super Bowl. It wins the Super Bowl 4% of the time. The 4 seed actually is 10% of the time, which is the most besides the first and second. So, the 4 seed is actually a good spot to be in. But, my point is that 2017, we knew that they were kind of ahead of schedule. If they beat the Falcons, and they probably should have, a lot of crazy stuff went down, that would have been great, but they weren't a Super Bowl team. 2018, they should have won. 2019, couldn't even tell you what happened there. I mean, Goff took a step back. The offensive line took a step back, and they didn't make the playoffs. 2020, I mean, that team at no point felt like they were a Super Bowl team because the offense was not where a Sean McVay offense would be. The defense was number 1. That's great. Defense wins championships, but I never felt like super comfortable. I had them beating the Packers, and at one point they had a chance. But not without Cooper Kupp and Aaron Donald did I ever think that they were going to go to the Super Bowl and win. But then you look at this year, and you have Stafford, who I have said for a while, he's astronomically better than Jared Goff. You might have had a better team last year, but the way this team down the stretch is playing, to me, they're as good, if not better than last year. I think that it shows you that last year's great as Brandon Staley was, he wasn't as great, at calling plays in the postseason as Raheem has been. And so when you look at it, the defense was even better than they looked against Tampa because, the offense put them in a really rough spot with 4 turnovers. If they took better care of that ball, there's a good chance that game is like 42-13. So I do think that the Rams, they can lose this game. They can win this game, but this doesn't feel like they're ahead of schedule. This feels like they should be expected to at least get to the Super Bowl, and we'll see. But if this was like the Bengals, like to me, the Bengals are ahead of schedule. The Niners, I can't say are ahead of schedule. I mean, you could argue, next year, Trey Lance, it's like, where do you go from there? Because Trey Lance could be like Mahomes, like I believe he can, or he could play worse than Garoppolo, or they could stick with Garoppolo. I mean, we don't know. So, I don't, it's not that I don't think the Niners deserve to be there. Like I'm sure you've heard a lot. I think really the only team out of those 4 that's ahead of schedule is truly the Bengals. And if they make the Super Bowl, great. I mean, props to them. But this is not a Rams team that just magically appeared here. They, by all means, should be here, So that's kind of my thing here. I watched 2017, felt like they were a year or 2 away. 2018 felt right. 2021 feels right. 2019, I have no comment on what happened in 2019. I'll just say that I'm still bitter that they would have made the playoffs under this format. And then they switched it to this format the year after. That would have helped. And then 2020, like I said, they were fun, best defense in the league. Still never felt like they were truly the best team in the league that year. This year, I feel like it's different.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does feel a little different. Like, I think this is where it kind of goes all in. You guys have to play pretty much for this Super Bowl. The pressure's on you guys. I think the one team that you just said they're getting ahead of the game is the Bengals. I think what people are looking at Joe Burrow as the ceiling. Even with terrible offensive line, he got sacked 9 times against Tennessee and still was able to win the game. I don't know any other quarterback who can go through that. And yeah, the Rams, they just have a all-around talent, and it's kind of like, I'm not going to disagree. You guys definitely deserve to be in the conference championship because of the way you guys are well coached by McVay, and I'm not taking that away. And plus, Stafford finally proved himself, like I've said a few times, and I think this is where it determines whether you guys are going to go or not. So the thing is, the pressure, like SoFi Stadium is a couple of weeks away from a Super Bowl, and it can be one of those matchups. Like, you might want to see the Chiefs and the Rams. I think that's the one team that has the high potential of like if they on Monday night. Yeah. Or you just want to see another game where it's another payback or a revenge repeat or something like that, or the classic, or you just have Rams and Bengals. It's kind of like one or the other. You can do a toss up on which one you would want to see, but there's different favorable matchups. I feel like if you guys were to play the Bengals, I feel like you guys are favorable on that one. But the Chiefs can be a shootout, and it can depend on which one shows up. But I feel like if the Niners were in, if I had to pick a favorable matchup, I think we fare up well against Cincinnati.
I think both teams do. I really, Cincinnati, like I said, I mean, could they win it all? Sure. I mean, it is possible. They're 2 games away, so to speak. But I just, not having an offensive line does not sit right with me. I'm just hoping Burrow has enough time to actually make that a game. I think he will. I think it ends up being 34-24 late touchdown kind of makes it look like, it's not a 3-point game anymore. It's a 10-point game. But I have both games as 10-point games. I think they both will come down to the wire. And I think the Rams will get a go-ahead touchdown to make it a 10-point game, just like I think Kansas City will make it a go-ahead touchdown to go up 10 at the end of that game.
Yeah. All right. We'll definitely see that, man. I know you probably got to do a little podcast a little later, but I appreciate you on the show, man. It's been an honor. Few months ago, we were having a good debate about this division.
Yeah.
You got some good knowledge. You're giving me some good tips on those all 22 stuff. I probably need to check more into that so I could do more film work and all that stuff. Like, everybody's been.
Remember what I said about the Seahawks? I was like, we don't worry about them.
Oh yeah, we don't worry about them. They're in the bottom now.
Yeah, it was like that was in November, and I was like, yeah, they're going
Yeah,
7-10, and they literally went 7-10.
yeah, that's what you said like during like that time. Yeah, I remember you saying that.
Yeah.
Oh, they're not going to go nowhere. It's going to be between those three teams.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing long term, nor do I care. They've been I don't feel bad for those fans at all. They have been the cockroach of the division where, it's always the joke there can be a nuclear holocaust and the things that would still you know, like be alive, so to speak, or a cockroach and, the Twinkie. Those are the things that would survive. So, I mean, Seattle is a cockroach. They have survived Hasselbeck, Russell Wilson. It does not matter who has played quarterback. You even saw this year. You're like, you got to be kidding me. They're winning games with Geno Smith. Like they're turning back the clock. Like this is insane. But finally, I knew it. Their reign of terror was going to come to an end. Cannot believe they won the division last year. They were not good enough to win the division last year. And the Rams proved that. I mean, they just knocked them right out of the wild card round in their own home. So, I think we'll see who they get at quarterback. I have no idea who they're going to get at quarterback, to be honest with you. I don't know if they're going to stick with Russell Wilson or not. I don't think personally they will, because I think Russell's going to want out. And I think there's a chance Pete Carroll retires. I mean, I definitely think that's still on the table. But this is the Rams, Niners, and you could argue Cardinals division now. This is a 3-team race. I need to see more out of Seattle, as far as team building an offensive line, and the quarterback situation. I need to know who's there before I can put them back into it.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those interesting like things. I mean, yeah, Seattle's been the team that was very competitive for a while. Now their time's up. It's either a change of the culture, like either Pete Carroll leaves or Russell Wilson wants out, and we'll see how that pans out. But like I said, like we don't even care about him at this point. So it's like we're focused on getting to the Super Bowl, winner takes all, and let the best team win. And best luck to your team. But except I'm playing y'all team, so we'll see about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Best of luck to your team as well. And, I think it'll be a good game either way.
Yeah, me too, man. I think it's going to be one of those games. It's probably going to be the most talk about game by far. Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why, Rams Niners, if you couldn't have booked it any better. So, to me, I think that's why it got the primetime slot it did. That's why the Rams Saints back in 2018, they were playing at the early slot. I feel like the primetime slot gets the best, matchup. And the Bengals and Chiefs, it's really good for this year, but it doesn't have the history that the Niners Rams has.
Yeah, because we've been divisions for so many years. You can go on to the 1940s and so on.
Seattle's new, Seattle was in the AFC. The Cardinals were, I think the Cardinals were in the AFC, if I'm not mistaken.
No, they were in a division, but they were in a different like I guess you were right about different conference. I think they were either into like a different division at one point.
Yeah, and then they had the Saints and Falcons, I think. It was the Rams, Saints, Falcons, Niners, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So, the Saints, I mean, obviously we know Sean Payton's rooting for you guys. He had to say that in his exit press conference. He's something else, man. He is something else. But yeah, best of luck to your team. I think it's going to be a really good game. And I do have the Rams winning, but like I said, I won't be surprised what happens. I won't be surprised if it's a blowout. I won't be surprised if it's a 3-point game. I've truly seen it all. So
yeah, I can see where you're coming from, and I appreciate you, man. Definitely in the near future, we'll definitely need to catch up again, man. But good stuff,
absolutely,
man.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem, bro. So we're on for the end of the stream. Thank you guys for tuning in, and be sure to check out Jake Ellenbogen's channel. Very knowledgeable Rams fan. He definitely has some good input on what he thinks of his team and other teams in general. I think you do a little bit of all 32 teams, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I like to cover all the teams. I have a big Rams spin, of course. Rams, color, background, whatever you want to call it. But, I'm very knowledgeable about all 32 teams. And if I had to do it as a full-time job to talk about all 32, I could do it. So, yeah, I talk about all of them. Just did a video the other day in one of my Q&As where I basically broke down all the tiers and was like, deciding each team and like where they are in the future and who could be, in this position next year. So no, absolutely. I like covering the whole NFL, and it's by far the best league in my opinion. So
Yeah, sure is. I'm starting to work on it a little bit, but I'm working on the NFC West, so it's kind of been a roundtable that I've been working with. So it's kind of got me some
nice.
different mix of my platform besides the 49ers. So it's like, even if that comes down to fruition, I'm still going to probably still report NFL news or do some other content later on.
Yeah, I mean that's the way to go.
Yeah, it sure is. But appreciate you, man. We're about to end it right now, bro. As always, for anybody else, definitely go check out Jake Ellenbogen and definitely check out the BGN Sports Media since they have the network. And I'm appreciated by Bird Game for having me host the stream. And thanks for Jake Ellenbogen for taking his time to debate this playoffs. And it's going to be a great game. Hopefully, let the best team win. And as always, go Niners.